Well, hello again. This here is a Sega Game Gear, a portable video game system, as they advertise it right there. And it's, well, and totally alright, but very old system from Sega, sort of the thing that should be competing against the Game Boy. And it did have a few features that were actually really nice, since, well, we have a color screen, and, well, yeah, the graphics were definitely a lot better on that. But, if you're already looking at this, you can see a few things that are off. First of all, the screen is terrible, and the screen was terrible always, but the screen is ridiculously terrible now. And also, if you're listening, where's the audio? The audio is turned up, but, well, the main reason why there's no audio is because I have the small little amplifier removed. But the reason why I have it removed is if I would plug it in, if there wouldn't be any audio anyways, because, well, we have a few bad capacitors in there. That looks crusty as hell. Damn. And yes, the capacitors which are in the system, other than the small sound module here, are no difference, and this is also the reason why the screen is looking so terrible, and while looking at it from the front is pretty much almost impossible. No matter how much you adjust the contrast, it just looks terrible and pretty much unplayable. So, as you can see, I've already opened this thing up, and man, this thing takes a lot of batteries, and you've got to be a bit careful in here because we have a high voltage special light in there for the screen. And yeah, taking a closer look in here, you can definitely see some capacitor leakage around multiple areas there, and general corrosion over here, probably because once also the batteries may have leaked and dripped a slight amount in there. But in this video, well, I'm going to remove all of those capacitors and swap them out with new ones. I found a really decent kit on eBay, and the link for that is in the bottom, but it's a German link. You can find that same kit pretty much anywhere on eBay, no matter what country really. So yeah, this is the kit. We have new electrolytic capacitors in here. Definitely a lot better than the ones that were in there, since, well, the 90s capacitors, which are all being used in here, are pretty much famous for failing right now, which is a big issue in the Amiga 1200, I think the 3000 and in some places as well, and especially the 4000, since, well, the capacitors pretty much destroyed the entire circuit board. So yeah, same problem here, but luckily the damage is not too insanely bad, so we can at least somehow manage to fix this thing. Alright, let's have a look at those circuit boards up close. We have the main board, we have the power circuitry, and we have the soundboard here. Now the soundboard is the one which is probably, as you can tell, in the worst condition of all circuit boards. As you can see, all of those pads look pretty terrible, even the ones on that small 8-pin package there. There's just a few good pads in there, but as you can tell, there has been a lot of corrosion in there. So one thing I'm gonna do is definitely, well, first of all, take a picture of it. Have the picture always available, so you know which capacitors go where and how everything is supposed to look. Also, you have a very nice before and after reference. So, well, yeah. Now, just to pretty much clarify what I mean by bad pads is, well, take a look at those pads there. They are pretty brownish and dull, and you can see shiny bits poking out of it. Also, we have that screw down there, which pretty much doesn't look like a screw anymore. So, if we take a look at those pads over here, which are just some pretty much SMD standard components on that 6-pin package there, this is what a proper solder joint should look like. All nice and shiny, and there's nothing wrong with it. Now we move over to the area where the capacitors are, and yeah, you can see a huge difference in that. They are all like crusty looking brown, there's some dog crap on there and everywhere, and it just looks awful. Yeah. So, well, this is probably the first board I'm going to start with, and since, well, it's the only board that actually isn't working in the system, all of the other circuit boards sort of work. Yeah, this is the one that's probably also the easiest to test, since it connects directly to the speaker. So if swapping the capacitors fixes the sound issue, we should have sound again, even though we still have a pretty terrible looking image. And to be honest, the power circuitry actually still looks just fine. I wouldn't, if I hadn't bought the kit, I wouldn't swap out those capacitors since they just still look fine. But hey, since they are included in that nice kit there, well, why not swap them out too? And the main board, and yes, you can see some serious damage done here. I would have to check the continuity on that trace there. Maybe scrape off the first layer and then well, just make sure that everything still has contact. And if it does, well, you can seal it back up again with some nail polish that is transparent. And yeah, again, the same thing. Terrible looking pads over here and everywhere, and oh my god, that is horrible looking. Yeah, I have seen worse, especially when it comes to battery acid damage. But yeah, this is also already pretty bad. The other side doesn't look that bad, although you can see some crusty pads there. So yeah, definitely going to clean those all up too. And there's some weird stuff on that big copper circle on the circuit board as well. So yeah. Alright, here we are at the sound board. And here are the capacitors that are listed. These are all the old ones, and here are all the new ones. As you can see, well, it's the same thing. Although the ones that are new probably are better quality, since they really messed something up in the 90s with the chemistry of these things, so that they would just start spewing their contents all over the place, which is pretty much exactly what has happened in here. Now, in order to get these capacitors off, we have to desolder them. Now, there are a few ways that people actually do this, and one of the ways is called the twist method. That means you grab the capacitor and just twist it off, and also rip off all the traces as well. Great. Do not use the twist method at all. If you have a board like this which is already damaged and you're putting that much force on all these pads, which again already have damage to them, there's a really high risk of you just ripping off everything, so yeah. Don't do that, and rather take the slow approach and be patient. Just heat up each side of that capacitor until it slowly comes off. Man, that smell from that solder, you can already tell that something has gone seriously wrong in here. Solder is not supposed to smell like this. It smells like something is burning, literally. There we go, this thing is off. Now yes, as you can see, this does look quite a little bit messy, and the pads look pretty darn terrible, to be honest. But again, that isn't too bad. I mean, cleaning this whole area up again, not that big of an issue, and in the end I'm definitely also going to use some more isopropanol alcohol on this, just to make sure everything is super nice and clean. You can also use acetone, but that may be a little bit aggressive for components that are made out of plastic, like here, so isopropanol is probably a way better way to go than acetone. Yeah. Now that chip there, probably a good idea is to desolder that one as well and resolder it, just so you have a better chance of cleaning up all of those pins in there. And yeah, you can also see that all those SMD components that are pretty darn terrible. So what you need are some Q-tips and contact cleaner or isopropanol alcohol, whatever your preference is. Alright, then just spray a nice and decent amount on there. It doesn't matter if you use too much, since the stuff isn't dangerous in any way to the circuit board. It just cleans it, which is nice. And get your Q-tip and start cleaning up the circuit board all nice and dandy. And damn, that is some bad looking stuff that's coming off of here. And it seems like I have to maybe also go ahead and resolder all of those SMD components, since the contacts on those look pretty darn terrible. But the chip may actually be, well, I can actually probably leave it in there, since it seems that those pins are all cleaning up very, very nicely, but I am definitely going to resolder it again from the other side, just to make sure fresh solder gets onto everything and there are no contact issues or anything. Alright, since I have cleaned this thing one time, what I'm going to do now is take the soldering iron again and just clean up those pads a little bit, just to get that top layer of dirt and crustiness all off of there, and try to get everything nice and clean. Damn, soldering iron is dirty. Can also start to put some new solder on these pins. That will make it a little bit easier to solder on the new capacitors again. Don't use too much, otherwise they're just going to bulge off of there and it will look really, really ugly. Alright, now repeat the same step again. Contact cleaner on there, or isopropanol alcohol, or acetone, but again, plastic and acetone will mix well. And clean that up really nicely. And there, that pad looks really nice again. I'm probably going to do the whole routine again once more, just to make sure everything is super clean on there. But yeah, this is pretty much all you really need to do. Now those SMD components right there, I'm going to resolder the pads on those again, just to make sure that everything is all fine around those. Alright, now you may notice I actually had to desolder the SMD components on there and solder them back on. I haven't actually soldered SMD that tiny, but I think I did a pretty good job so far. Everything seems to have decent continuity and contact again, so that's good, and also the contacts are all nice and shiny again, like they should be. Now I am going to desolder the connectors, these two, and the chip, because, well, it does appear that damage is pretty intense around there, and yeah, I need to get access to some very, very tight and small areas, and those components are just in the way, and the connectors would just pretty much melt. So yeah. So that pretty much just means, hey, desolder those two, and repeat the entire setup to the rest. Whew, it's gonna take hours. Well, I managed to get the capacitors off. Turns out they weren't even hold on to anything by anything anymore. Yikes. So here you can pretty much see how it should be, how it is, and what's going to look like afterwards. I've already done a similar repair on this on an old Sony Walkman, which had pretty much the same issue, but it wasn't as bad as this. But damn, this is horrible. I tried to actually desolder that chip, but it doesn't seem to be able to want to come out anymore. So that is actually kind of bad. Maybe I can get a replacement and just swap the whole thing out. So it just seems to be a standard ST part there. But I'm going to check on that before I start cutting off any legs on that thing. Yeah, that is horrible. So there's definitely going to be also quite a bit of that stuff underneath that chip there. Since if you look at those pins, yeah, it's pretty darn awful. So this is going to need a lot of contact cleaner and a lot of Q-tips. Damn, that's a whole lot better. At least it looks like a normal circuit board now again. Still not finished with cleaning up everything. As you can see, the assembly components right there are still not alright. I cannot get this chip out. That top crusty section there seems to be sitting in there so tight that just doesn't want to move at all. So I'm not really sure on how I'm supposed to get that chip out of there again. And there are a few traces I really like to inspect and make sure that they're fine. Since if we take a look on the back, we can see this here, and it doesn't look like there's a proper trace running along there anymore again. But I could be wrong and it's still just fine. We have some darkening there. I'm going to check that as well. If there are any resistive issues, then I'm going to fix that up as well. But yeah, that is quite a bit of progress in comparison to what this thing looked like before. Damn, finally I got that thing out. Actually, surprisingly, under the chip it's not that bad, just a little more contacts to clean up. Nothing too big of a deal. The chip itself, I'm going to clean that up as well. I assume it's probably just gonna be fine, but definitely gonna make, well, other than desoldering it again and replacing it, there's nothing more to do. Turns out my actual professional desoldering gun couldn't do the business on this, probably because the vacuum isn't strong enough. But the $20 cheapo desoldering gun, or desoldering iron, or whatever you want to call it, that you get for like 20 bucks off Aliexpress, well, that did the job beautifully. Although I wouldn't really trust that thing in terms of safety, because, well, yay, this thing makes contact with all the contacts in the adapter that it comes with, and you still have more than enough room to accidentally touch the live mains. I mean, it's now it's making contact. I can easily touch that mains there. So yeah, if you get this one, just cut the cord off and solder a proper connector on there. Otherwise, this thing is pretty darn good. I can again put a link to Aliexpress where I bought this from, but you can actually just find this one fairly easily for like around 20 bucks on Aliexpress, just if you search desoldering pump or desoldering gun. Nothing too really complicated, and this is really, really good. One of the like really cheap desoldering tools that actually works. Yeah, it's surprising. Sometimes you get really good stuff from Aliexpress, but let's forget that and move back onto this. Alright, so I have been taking a close look at this chip, and I don't really think it's worth salvaging and reusing it again. I don't know if it still works. I presume it still works, but the way it just looks and the amount of corrosion it has on it is just bad. So what I did is I'm going to put this one back in here, since I have cleaned up everything nicely there as well. And I bought some new of these, and I'm going to swap those out when this chip arrives, just so that I have at least a possibility of testing this thing. And if it doesn't work, well then I know this thing is bad. Yeah. Also, I'm going to check for the continuity for that one down there, since that through hole there looked kinda odd and strange, like as if there was any copper more left. And yeah. Now it's just the tedious work of putting the capacitors in there. Now I have one of the capacitors already soldered in there, and you can see it's a bit of a weird standing up thingy on that. Well, it's actually not that bad. I thought it was a lot worse when I soldered it back in. But you can see there's a bit of crusty solder on some places, and that's because, well, like as you've seen before, there was this dark section on the circuit board, and that just peeled off as I was soldering. So yeah, I had bare copper underneath, and I just decided to tin it and solder the capacitor on there. I mean, yeah, okay, it's not the nicest solder joint there, but it's going to work out just fine. I have to remove these two connectors here in order to solder in that capacitor up there, and also to check that trace, since I have no idea where this one goes, since it just hides underneath the connector right there. And I don't think I can actually see where it's going. Great. Damn, this took freaking forever, but at least now the board is completely assembled again. I have soldered that chip back in, although I'm going to remove it in the future when the new ones arrive. And yeah, now all that's pretty much left to do is just plug it back into the Game Gear and see if it does anything. Well, at least you can say the Game Gear is service friendly, since you can put it all back together but still have it disassembled at the same time. Well, let's see if you can see anything on that screen with its terrible viewing angle, but again, that's because of the capacitors. And switch the thing on. We have sound! Let's turn this light off and see if it's any better. Actually, it's worse. Well, oh, that seems to be the best angle. So well, the audio is back. Yay! That's one of 3 boards done. This is going to take a while. Alright, so since we now have finished the soundboard, with its 5 capacitors, let's move over to the power supply. Just because, well, I'm feeling a bit lazy and I want to do those 3 first, and, well, I have to take that entire board out there. So, even though I think those capacitors would still be totally fine, since they are included in the kit, I'm going to swap those out as well. No issue whatsoever, since these are a lot bigger electrolytes, and these don't tend to go bad in something like a handheld where there's not much of power going through. But, yeah, if you're swapping capacitors in the unit, it's probably best to swap out everything. So, yeah, why not? And, well, for this, pretty simple, yeah, just use a desoldering gun, apply some solder to those capacitors, just so that this thing has a proper place to grip onto, and then suck the solder off and the capacitors will just slide out. That simple. Well, I stand to be corrected. Turns out that it's actually a good idea to replace the capacitors on the power supply too. I mean, since look at those pads, this thing has definitely leaked as well. So, yeah. I was just wrong on that. Usually I've never really seen any big leakage or other issues with these type of capacitors. Especially in like Amigas or so. Nothing wrong with those at all. But yeah, apparently there is. So if you plan on replacing the capacitors, well, also replace the ones in the power supply. Since, well, these also do tend to go bad, as it turns out. Oh well, and yeah, again, just make sure you have it in there the right way around. That white section there is the white section on the capacitor, which is the negative. Alright, and the new capacitors are soldered in there. Board also cleaned up a bit nicely. So yeah, I don't really think it's worth testing, but I'm just gonna do it anyways. Since, well, there wasn't really anything wrong with this board that much. Just maybe the capacitor is starting really to leak. But yeah, let's put it back into the Game Gear and power it up. So yeah, of course, well, that works. Since, well, there wasn't really anything bad wrong with that circuit board. So, now we get into the real big meat, which is the entire main board of the Sega Game Gear, and there are a lot of capacitors in there. Either it's 10 or it's 11. That depends on what kind of model you have. I haven't actually checked, but they have included all 11 capacitors just in case you have a different version of the Game Gear which has the 11 capacitors in there. Yeah, I probably will find that out when I start actually working on this thing. So, well, here we have the main board, and this is actually the version that has the 11 capacitors. So, yeah, it's good that they have included that. And, yeah, you can really see in what state the contacts in there all are. And, yeah, the same thing as before. Just clean up everything nicely. And since, well, this type of capacitor, whatever the hell that is, it's a really strange package. I have never actually seen this type of package anywhere else, but they have just supplied it with some electrolytics, and those will do just fine. You have to kind of hack-ish bend them in there and solder them to the pads, but come on, that's not really a big of an issue. Alright, and that's pretty much how the new capacitors get soldered in there, since whatever kind of this package is, no idea where you're supposed to get that, or if it actually still exists. Alright, man oh man, this took long, really long, but all the capacitors, as you can see, have been swapped out. I had a bit of an issue again with this section right here, where the solder mask would actually start peel away and reveal the copper underneath, so I tinned those traces again. Maybe they got a little bit too thick, but it doesn't really matter, at least it provides prevention from corrosion and everything. And yeah, so far everything looks really good. So, well, let's reassemble this thing, sort of, and test it out. Alright, and we are back assembled again. Sorry about that, even though the screen is a lot better now in person, it's horrible to record with a camera. Let's see if that works. But yeah, this is the second level. I played the first one already. and everything seems to be working just fine. Let's see if I can get to the end of this stage. Oh, of course I need to jump. Oh well, just got one hand, since the other one is holding the camera. Oh well. So yeah, as you can tell, that pretty much fixed the system. I mean, the audio's back. The audio's back, and well, yeah, the screen is looking a whole lot better in person. It's still freaking terrible to record off, but yeah, there is a possibility to modify this thing to get composite video out of it. Probably not going to do that for this unit, since well, it's not mine. And yeah, this is pretty good, even though it uses like 6 AA batteries. There of course is the LCD modification for this, which I'd highly recommend to a friend of mine that he should do this, or if he wants I can do it for him, since that would definitely increase the way this thing looks and works. But at least now you don't have to stare at it from this angle just to be able to see anything. Well. So yeah. The only thing that's pretty much left is just wait for that new amplifier to show up and then swap the old one in here out. It's not going to make any difference in terms of audio sound or anything really, but yeah. At least then it doesn't have a chip in which is full of corrosion and capacitor leakage. Yeah. So well, that was pretty much it. Thank you for watching and goodbye.